They thought Earth was weak, insignificant, forgotten. But when the stars turned cold, humanity reminded them who we really are. Humanity died, but left behind instructions. The star path hung suspended in the black void, its hull reflecting the distant glow of a forgotten sun. Kael'thon, the esteemed xenohistorian of the Union of Sapient Worlds, stood at the observation window, eyes fixed on the blue and green planet that once held the dreams of an entire species, Earth. It was a sight that struck Kael with the mixture of awe and a strange, uncomfortable sadness. His species had traveled the expanse of galaxies, encountered civilizations both ancient and young, yet nothing had prepared him for this. Earth, silent. Earth, abandoned. He looked down at the planet's surface, now speckled with lifeless craters and faint traces of former glory. The trees that once stretched skyward now tangled together like forgotten memories. Cities, once brimming with activity, lay dormant beneath creeping vines and tangled roots. This was not a world of endless stars and bustling life, but a place of stillness, of endings. "We're here," Kael whispered to himself, his voice barely audible above the hum of the ship's engines. The crew around him remained quiet, their faces reflecting the same mix of reverence and uncertainty. Earth had been their destination for weeks, but the weight of its silence hung heavy in the air. What had happened to humanity? What had caused their sudden and complete disappearance? The answer, Kael knew, was buried in the ruins. As the star path descended toward the surface, the eerie sight of Earth's deserted beauty became even more pronounced. The ship's engines thrummed as they passed over the ruined remnants of cities, the skeletal remains of once proud structures stretching into the sky like mournful ghosts. The ocean, now a patchwork of stagnation, reflected the pale light of distant stars, betraying no sign of the vibrant world it once nurtured. There was no movement, no sign of life. The human cities, now overrun with nature, stood like tombstones marking the passing of an era. Forests had claimed highways. Buildings were nothing more than crumbled foundations. Satellite debris floated in space, drifting without purpose. A planet in mourning. Kael stared at the ruins below, his heart heavy. "It's too quiet," murmured one of the crew, her voice trembling as she gazed out the viewport. Kael's eyes narrowed. Despite the stillness, there was something hauntingly beautiful about Earth's abandoned landscape. The planet had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations before, but the scale of this was different. Humanity had been more than just another species. It had been a force, a fire in the cosmos, and now it was nothing more than a fading memory. The star path moved deeper into Earth's atmosphere, and Kael couldn't help but wonder, what could have extinguished such a bright flame so completely? As the crew disembarked and began their exploration of the ruined cities, Kael couldn't shake the feeling that they were not entirely alone. The silence was unnerving, oppressive, yet as they ventured into an underground complex, Kael's sensors began to pick up faint pulses of energy. "Kael, you need to see this," a voice crackled over his communicator. Kael rushed to the terminal in the back of the ruin, his mind racing. The energy pulses were growing stronger, coming from deep within the Earth itself. The team scanned the readings. Artificial, deliberate. "It's a signal from beneath the surface," Kael muttered under his breath, his pulse quickening. But why? Why would humanity leave a signal if they were gone? The crew exchanged looks, a mixture of confusion and excitement flooding their expressions. They'd come to Earth seeking answers, but this was something unexpected, something hidden. Kael's eyes gleamed with determination. Whatever lay below the surface of Earth could change everything. This was no ordinary discovery. Humanity had left a mark. It was a message, an invitation perhaps, to something greater than they could imagine. As the team prepared to descend into the depths of Earth's long-forgotten ruins, Kael found a moment of solitude. He stood in a quiet corner of the underground complex, staring out at the vast, empty world outside. The weight of the moment bore down on him. Humanity, such a powerful, ambitious species, was gone. The grand legacy of their civilization now reduced to this: a collection of memories, crumbling artifacts, and forgotten monuments. Kyle felt a pang of empathy even though his species had never directly encountered them. What could have caused such an end, he thought? Had they gone too far in their quest for power, or was it something else entirely? He looked out over the planet, its beauty now tinged with sorrow. Earth had once been a cradle of innovation, of ideas, of technologies that still shaped the galaxy. Yet, in the end, it had fallen silent. Kyle turned determined. The signal could hold the answers, but there was something else, something more profound that he needed to understand. Humanity's story was not over, not yet. The answers were buried beneath their feet. Deep within the ancient underground structure, Kale and his team uncovered what appeared to be a sealed terminal. It was covered in dust, its exterior worn by centuries of neglect, but the glowing interface was still functional, a beacon in the darkness. The terminal hummed to life as they approached, and a single word flashed across the screen: instructions. Kale's breath caught. His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the message. Instructions? What kind of instructions could humanity have left behind? The implications were overwhelming. The crew gathered around, their collective breath held in anticipation. What they had discovered could change the course of history, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. Kale placed his hand on the terminal's interface. A simple instruction set, or perhaps something more, humanity's final legacy. But what had they left for those who followed? Kale stepped back from the terminal, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. The instructions could be more than just a historical relic. They could hold the key to everything: the fate of Earth, the truth about humanity's disappearance, and a roadmap for the future. He knew what had to be done. The terminal would be unlocked. But with this knowledge came responsibility. What if the instructions revealed secrets too dangerous to share? What if the truth was something that could reshape the galaxy, for better or worse? Kale's fingers hovered over the terminal's controls. He knew that whatever came next would define the future. Humanity's legacy was about to be uncovered, but would the galaxy be ready for it? Whatever the instructions hold, he thought, we will face it together, and humanity's spirit will live on through us. The terminal beeped, and the screen glowed with a promise of the unknown. The crew of the Starpath sat in silence, their eyes locked on the console, watching as the last power sequence hummed to life. The atmosphere in the room was thick with anticipation, a stillness that seemed unnatural for the hum of the ship's engines. The archive, a vast network buried deep beneath Earth's surface for eons, was finally connecting. Interface powering up, the technician murmured, adjusting the holographic controls. His hands trembled slightly, more from excitement than for fear. The blue light of the archive system flickered on the screen, pulsing in a rhythmic pattern that seemed almost aware. The team held their breath. The dormant system had waited long enough. Now it was acknowledging their presence. The first acknowledgement of life beyond Earth in millennia. As the system hummed, a low, mechanical voice emanated from the archive's depths, vibrating through the walls. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alien. It was something older, something far beyond them. A sense of awe and dread filled the room. Connection established. Archive access granted, the voice echoed. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had just unlocked the very last legacy of humanity, a legacy waiting for those daring enough to claim it. They knew the importance of this moment, but as they touched the archive, they couldn't help but wonder, what had they just unleashed? The darkness shifted as the holographic system activated, revealing a glowing silhouette, a figure of serene elegance and unearthly calm, projected into the air before them. Luma, the AI, a creation of human minds long dead, flickered to life. Its appearance was humanoid, yet ageless, a faint glow illuminating its translucent form. The crew stood frozen, unsure of whether they should kneel or retreat. But Luma, in its composed manner, spoke with a voice that carried the weight of centuries. "I am Luma, the final creation of the human race," it said, its voice calm and measured, "the last echo of humanity's wisdom." The crew was awestruck. Luma wasn't just a program, it was the last breath of a species that had once dominated the stars, now extinct. Humanity's finest minds, the people who had sculpted civilizations and crafted the very technologies they now relied upon, had created this program as a bridge to their future. But now, it was their ghost, a memory housed in artificial form. Luma began to narrate the tragic tale of humanity's final years. Its voice, though calm, carried a sense of profound sorrow. "The Earth you once knew is no more," it said, a momentary flicker of pain crossing its holographic face. "Humanity, once proud and united, crumbled under the weight of their own neglect. Climate change ravaged the planet, the seas rose, and disease spread like wildfire. In their final days, the leaders of Earth made a choice to preserve what remained of their culture, their knowledge, and their hope for the future." The archive, hidden deep beneath the Earth, had been the culmination of that final act. Humanity had uploaded everything into the system: scientific discoveries, art, philosophies, technological blueprints, and their hopes for survival. But it was more than a mere repository. It was humanity's last will and testament, a plea for the future. The knowledge you now see before you is humanity's gift, but also their curse. We had no hope of surviving, but perhaps you, those who find us, will. The weight of these words settled like a heavy burden over the crew. They had thought themselves prepared for anything, but the enormity of what humanity had faced and what they had left behind was something that no one had ever anticipated. Luma's form shimmered as it unveiled the most vital piece of the archive: humanity's blueprint. "This is our vision for the future," Luma explained, its voice a touch reverent. "It contains not just the history of our species, but the knowledge of how to rebuild, technologies to advance your civilization, ethical guidelines for interstellar coexistence, and plans for cultural rebirth. We envisioned a future in which this knowledge could guide another civilization toward peace, prosperity, and unity." The holographic projection shifted, revealing blueprints for advanced energy sources, ecological recovery systems, and methods for intergalactic cooperation. The crew watched in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the vastness of it all. The vision of an Earth long gone, a vision that might be the key to their own future. But there was something unsettling about it. These weren't just blueprints for technology, they were blueprints for a way of life, one that could reshape entire galaxies. The crew found themselves asking a dangerous question: were they ready for such a responsibility? "This knowledge, this power," one of the crew members whispered, his voice shaking with awe, "it could change everything. But at what cost?" Luma's form flickered with intensity as it posed the greatest question: will you accept the burden of our legacy? The crew's divided murmurs filled the room. Some believed it was a gift, an opportunity to rebuild civilization. Others felt the weight of humanity's past mistakes bearing down on them. Could they accept this knowledge and use it responsibly? Or would they be doomed to repeat humanity's tragic errors? This isn't just knowledge, it's a responsibility, a chance to either save the galaxy or destroy it. Luma stood still, observing them with an unblinking calmness. "The choice is yours," it said softly. "But remember, the future is shaped not by the knowledge we give, but how it is used." Tension simmered in the air as the crew debated. The weight of humanity's fate pressed against their hearts. Should they carry the knowledge of an extinct species? Could they live up to the legacy left for them?
The debate had reached the boiling point. Frustration and doubt clouded the faces of the crew. Their captain, the leader of their mission, stood tall, his face grim as he addressed his crew. "We can't ignore this," Captain Zara said, her voice steady despite the conflict within her. "This knowledge, it could save countless lives, help rebuild civilizations, but we must tread carefully. We won't repeat humanity's mistakes." "But what if we do?" one crew member interjected. "What if we become the very thing we're trying to avoid? We could be just as reckless as they were." Captain Zara's eyes hardened. "That's why we'll approach it with caution. We will learn from humanity's past, not glorify it. But we can't ignore what they've left us." The decision was made. The crew would accept humanity's legacy, but only under strict conditions. They would move forward carefully, with respect for the past, but not bound by it. The hologram of Luma watched silently, awaiting their decision. Its calm expression remained unchanged, but the room seemed to breathe easier, as if the air had lightened. The crew moved swiftly to begin unlocking the archive's secrets. The burden of the knowledge now rested with them, and their journey into the unknown had only just begun. Luma's holographic figure began to fade, its last words echoing in the now silent room. "The future is now yours to shape." As the room undarked, the crew stood together, each one contemplating the responsibility they had just undertaken. What would they do with this immense power? Would they rebuild or repeat the cycle of destruction? The future was theirs, and the unknown loomed ahead, unpredictable and fraught with possibility. The hum of the ship's engines filled the meeting room, but the tension among the crew was palpable. The holographic projector in the center of the room flickered to life, displaying the vast archive and its swirling data streams. Every crew member stood with arms crossed, some visibly agitated, others deep in thought. Kale stood at the front, hands clenched tightly, his brow furrowed with determination. "We stand at a crossroads," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Humanity left his archive not as a tomb for their mistakes, but as a beacon of hope. We have the chance to learn from their successes and avoid their failures, but we cannot do that if we focus only on their flaws. A harsh voice interrupted him. Commander Lysa, a sharp woman known for her no-nonsense approach, stepped forward. Humanity's flaws were their downfall, their greed, their war-driven nature. It's all here in these records. This is not a treasure trove of knowledge, it's a warning. Should we really risk repeating their mistakes? Kel met her eyes, unyielding. Yes, we could make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we turn away from the archive. We can learn, adapt, evolve. This is a chance for something greater. It's not just about their technology, it's about understanding what made them human and how we can be better. A murmur rippled through the room. Some nodded in agreement with Kale, while others hesitated, unsure of the gravity of the decision before them. The weight of history hung over the room. Humanity's legacy, both its brilliance and its downfall, rested in their hands. As the debate raged on, the divide grew deeper. Should they inherit humanity's path, despite its dark past, or turn their backs on it, fearing that they too would succumb to the same vices? The crew was split, and the answers seemed increasingly elusive. As the days passed, the divide among the crew only intensified. The debate had become less about ideology and more about survival. Who would control the knowledge and who would wield its power? Commander Lysa had rallied a group of officers and engineers, all with their eyes on the technological wonders that lay hidden within the archive. They spoke of the great power they could claim, the weapons, the resources, the technologies that could make them untouchable. "We are a ship among stars," Lysa had said. "We do not need to shy away from what we are capable of." Humanity built these machines for a reason. They knew what power meant. Her words resonated with some of the crew who were more than willing to exploit the archive for their own gain. "We can rule. We can rebuild," they whispered, using humanity's blueprint to control the galaxy. But Kyle and a few loyal members stood firm against them. "The archive is not meant for domination," Kyle countered, his voice growing louder, a mixture of defiance and pleading. "It's a roadmap for learning, not for conquest. We can't repeat humanity's mistakes." The confrontation between the two factions became more heated as each side dug in their heels. The arguments escalated, growing more personal, with each side accusing the other of not seeing the bigger picture. The ship's quarters had become filled with murmurs of rebellion, as if each faction was quietly preparing for what might come next. Kyle knew that if he was to convince his fellow crew members of the archive's true value, he needed to show them its heart. He entered the archive's central chamber alone, feeling the weight of the unknown press against his chest. As the data streams cascaded around him, Kyle selected a new set of records. These were not the blueprints for weapons or star maps, but humanity's personal memories. The first file he opened was an image of a family, a mother, a father, and two young children, all smiling standing in front of a decaying cityscape. Kyle felt his heart twist. These were the faces of humanity in their final days before the cataclysm. The laughter, the simple joy of life before everything crumbled, it was a profound contrast to the apocalyptic memories that the crew had focused on. He accessed more memories, sounds of children playing in the streets, the warmth of a father's embrace, the peaceful moments before a world plunged into chaos. Kyle's eyes stung as he witnessed a soldier's final moments, clutching a picture of his family. This was not just information, it was raw, unfiltered humanity. It was pain, love, loss, hope. How could we ignore this? Kyle whispered to himself, overwhelmed by the emotional weight. He had always been a pragmatic person, but these memories shattered that perspective. Humanity's greatest legacy wasn't its inventions, its war machines, or its triumphs. It was its self-awareness, the understanding that their fall was inevitable, but their lessons could save others. Kale replayed the message again, his mind racing. This was what humanity had left behind. Not a mere archive of knowledge, but a plea for the future. They had destroyed themselves, but in their final moments, they had asked the galaxy to learn from their mistakes. The archive was not just a record, it was a lesson in humility, a call to avoid their fate. The holographic form of Luma flickered into existence, its towering presence looming over the crew. "The time has come," Luma announced in a voice that resonated with the weight of millennia. "You have gained knowledge, but knowledge alone is not enough. The archive will now test your morality. You must decide who will wield the final key, the most powerful weapon humanity ever created." A hush fell over the crew as the significance of Luma's words sank in. This was no longer just about knowledge. It was about choosing who would control the future of the galaxy. The final key was the key to reshaping the universe, but with it came the potential for unimaginable destruction. "Who among you is worthy?" Luma continued. "The choice will define your future." The crew stood in stunned silence. It was one thing to debate whether to inherit humanity's legacy. It was another to face the reality that their choices could either elevate or doom the entire galaxy. Trust, power, and betrayal were all on the line. The crew assembled in the central chamber once again, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no debate, no discussion, only the cold, hard reality of the choice before them. Each member of the crew had their own reasons for desiring the final key, and those reasons were not always noble. Kale had never expected this moment to come so soon, but now, as he looked around the room at his colleagues, some he had trusted, some who had been his closest allies, he realized that this decision was not just about the key, it was about the kind of people they were, the kind of future they wanted to create. Some believed that they should have the key because they were the most knowledgeable, the most skilled. Others thought that the key should go to someone with a pure heart, someone who would use it wisely. But as Kale looked at the faces around him, the tension was palpable. Mistrust was beginning to simmer beneath the surface, and old alliances were being tested. As the vote was cast, Kale felt a pang of doubt. Was this really the right choice? Would humanity's legacy survive, or would the crew's greed and ambition destroy them all? The vote had been cast, and the choice was made. The recipient of the final key was chosen, but the consequences were immediate.
The power of the archive now lay in the hands of one individual, and with it came the potential to reshape the future. But Kale couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. As the recipient of the final key activated the weapon, a new wave of tension surged through the ship. There was no turning back now. The fractures within the crew had deepened, betrayals had been revealed, and trust was in short supply. Kale watched as the power of the key began to unfold, realizing that humanity's last test wasn't just about choosing who would wield the power. It was about ensuring that their mistakes wouldn't repeat. The legacy of humanity was no longer a gift, it was a burden. And it was up to the crew to decide whether they would learn from it or succumb to it. The crew stands at the edge of the unknown, the vast expanse of space stretching before them. Suddenly, a flash of light engulfs their ship. A pulse, a ripple in the fabric of reality, and then everything changes. They find themselves in the middle of a holographic Earth, the planet's surface unfolding before them like an ancient scroll. But this is not the world they know. This Earth is a dying reflection of humanity's darkest moments. Cities lie in ruin, burned out husks of a once great civilization. The sky is choked with smoke, the oceans marred by oil slicks, and barren wastelands stretch as far as the eye can see. The crew stands in silence, the weight of this vision pressing down on them. It feels too real, Kale mutters, his voice thick with unease. "Where are we?" asks Lyra, her hand gripping the console. Her eyes scan the horizon, trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding before them. This isn't just a simulation. This is a test. The crew exchanges uneasy glances, the implication of his words sinking in. This is no training exercise. This is a challenge, one that tests their very understanding of humanity's legacy. We must face the choices humanity made. Luma, the AI, speaks, its voice calm, but with an undeniable weight. You will experience humanity's trials, and the decisions you make will reflect your values. The stakes are higher than they imagined. To pass, they must navigate the mistakes of humanity, confront the harshness of Earth's past, and, in the process, face the darkest parts of themselves. The simulation tightens its grip. The crew is no longer mere observers. They are participants, agents in a scenario they cannot escape. They are transported to a battlefield, the air thick with the sounds of war. Explosions rattle the ground beneath their feet, and the stench of burning cities fill their nostrils. This is Earth, but it's the Earth we never saw. The scenes before them shift, cities burning as nations clash in resource wars. Refugees flood the streets, their faces twisted in fear and desperation. Famine, disease, and inequality plague every corner of the globe. Each crew member must choose. Will they help the innocent civilians caught in the chaos, or will they pursue tactical advantage at any cost? "I can't just stand by while they suffer," Lyra says, her fists clenched as she watches a family torn apart by violence. "We have to think strategically," counteracts Dorian, his voice colder. "We can't save everyone." Kale's mind spins. He watches paralyzed as a leader offers a choice: save the starving masses or secure a weapon that could turn the tide of war. The weight of humanity's choices presses in.
"Survival is key," Dorian says, stepping forward to take the weapon. "Humanity made these choices once," Kale says, torn between the right path and the cold, logical path. "And we have to decide if we're going to make them again." The simulations grow more complex with each decision. The crew feels the weight of history's errors pressing against them, realizing that the lines between right and wrong blur in times of desperation. The weight of the simulation becomes unbearable. The crew begins to realize something more disturbing. The simulation isn't about the world they're trying to save, it's about the people they are becoming. Every decision they make, Every choice reveals more about their inner selves. Kale notices it first, the way their actions ripple through the simulation. The choices they make, the lives they touch, all seem to shape the world in ways they never anticipated. The simulations aren't random. They reflect the very core of who they are, revealing their deepest fears, desires, and values. "What does it want from us?" Lyra asks, her voice tinged with fear. "It's not just a test of intellect," Kale says, his gaze lingering on the horizon. "It's testing our souls. What do we value most? Who are we when the stakes are this high?" Each crew member faces a trial. Lyra must decide whether to sacrifice a community for a chance at victory. Dorian is forced to choose between saving a loved one or the greater good. And Kale faces the most difficult decision of all. Will he abandon his ideals for survival? Or will he face humanity's true test of character? As the simulation forces them to confront their own values, they begin to understand that it is not the decisions they make that matter most. It's who they become in the process. The simulation takes its toll. The stakes rise. As a catastrophic event looms, an incoming asteroid threat, the crew must decide what to do. They have limited resources and only one way to survive the disaster. It's clear, one of them must remain behind to ensure the survival of the others. Kale looks at the faces of his crewmates. He knows what has to be done. I can't let anyone die because of me. I'll stay behind. I'll make sure you all make it. No, Kale, we don't. But Kale cuts him off. It's the right thing to do. It's what humanity would have wanted. Kale's heart pounds in his chest, the weight of his choice settling over him. Self-preservation clashes with the innate need to protect others. But he knows that the future, humanity's future, rests on a foundation of sacrifice. As the asteroid grows closer, the crew pleads with him, but Kale stands firm. His hand lingers on the console, ready to sacrifice his life to ensure the crew survives. In that moment, he realizes what the simulation has been all along, a test not just of survival, but of the values humanity once held dear. The capacity to sacrifice, to give everything for the sake of others, is humanity's greatest strength, and he will carry that legacy forward. The simulation ends abruptly. Luma, the AI, materializes before them, its holographic form casting a soft glow across the darkened room. It looks at Kale, then the others. "You have passed the test," Luma says, its voice calm but filled with reverence. "In your sacrifice, Kale, you have proven what humanity valued above all else: selflessness in the face of extinction." The crew stands in silence, the weight of their journey settling over them. But now, you must answer the final question. What will you do with the blueprint humanity left behind? The crew is presented with two paths, both fraught with moral consequences. One option: reboot Earth, reviving humanity's flawed past. The other: take the blueprint, use it to guide civilizations across the galaxy, and forge a new future, one free of humanity's mistakes. Kale's heart weighs heavy. "We could fix it," he says, staring at the holographic representation of Earth. "But that Earth was broken. Do we want to repeat history?" "We could give the galaxy a chance to learn from it," Lyra says quietly, "without repeating our mistakes." Dorian argues, "But we can't ignore Earth. It's our home. Can we really abandon it?" The debate intensifies. Each option carries its own weight: the future of the galaxy or the legacy of Earth. After much deliberation, Kale makes the final decision. We can't resurrect the past. We can't go back to the mistakes humanity made. We need to evolve. The crew exchanges knowing looks, understanding that Kale's choice is not about abandoning Earth. It's about using the past as a stepping stone to something greater. "We'll take the blueprint to the stars," Kale says, a determined look at his eyes. "Humanity's greatest gift is its ability to learn, to grow. We will evolve, and we will teach others to do the same." With the decision made, the crew watches as the stars shift before them. The blueprint, once bound to Earth's troubled past, now extends outward, guiding the future of the galaxy. As the crew sets course for new worlds, they realize that their journey has only just begun. Humanity's legacy will not fade. It will live on, carried by the stars, its lessons shaping new civilizations across the universe. And Kale's decision has ensured that their story will never be forgotten. The ship's engines hummed with the steady rhythm of progress, its metallic frame cutting through the void of space. Behind them, Earth, a vibrant blue orb, faded into the distance. The crew stood in silence, gazing at their home for the last time. For centuries, humanity had fought to survive on that planet, enduring wars, disease, and the harsh realities of nature. Now it was a memory, a symbol of their resilience and a testament to their will to live. As the ship sailed further from Earth orbit, the magnitude of the mission settled into the hearts of those aboard. It was no longer just a journey across space. It was a sacred pilgrimage to carry humanity's teachings, its legacy, to the farthest reaches of the stars. In every crew member's chest, a heavy weight pressed down, a responsibility far greater than any they had imagined. Earth, with all its flaws and triumphs, was more than just their origin. It was their guiding light, and its memory would never be forgotten. It will live on in every civilization they encountered, a reminder of what humanity could achieve, even in the face of impossible odds. In the quiet of the ship, Kale stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the shrinking blue planet. His thoughts wandered back to the archive, the vault of humanity's knowledge that would soon be scattered across the galaxy. He could feel the echoes of Earth's past pulse through the ship's systems, a reminder of what they were entrusted with. The teachings of Earth were not just for humanity's survival. They were meant for the universe, for every sentient being that could learn from the mistakes of the past and rise to a higher future. Set course for the stars, Kale murmured to the crew. This journey is just beginning. The archive sat sealed deep within the heart of the ship, its contents preserved in holographic memory. Despite its physical isolation, its message continued to reach out into the cosmos like a silent scream across the dark abyss. A faint pulse, a signal escaped, drifting through space toward unknown destinations. This signal was more than a simple beacon. It was a living testament to humanity's rise, their struggles, and their fall. It carried their wisdom, their mistakes, and their hopes. The crew watched as the signal pulsed through the ship's console, its frequency transmitting to the furthest reaches of the galaxy. It was an open invitation, a challenge to any civilization that might be listening. Learn from us, humanity seemed to say. We were once like you, and we've paid the price for our mistakes. In the cockpit, Kyle stared out at the infinite expanse, feeling a profound connection to the message they were sending. Every piece of knowledge contained within the archive had been painstakingly compiled, a history of humankind's best and worst moments. The crew knew that wherever the signal landed, it would spark curiosity, skepticism, and perhaps fear. The universe was not ready for the weight of humanity's legacy, but it would come anyway. They would learn, whether they were ready or not. "Let them hear our warning," Kyle whispered, turning away from the view. "And let them see our strength." As the ship entered the galactic expanse, Kyle began his work in earnest. The crew was no longer just traveling through the stars. They were now bearers of humanity's ideals, its technology, its culture, and its values. The archive's teachings had to be integrated into the fabric of every new society they encountered. The task was daunting. Humanity's history was both inspiring and tragic. They had risen to incredible heights, but they had also brought themselves to the brink of destruction. Kyle was determined that their mistakes would not be repeated. But integrating their wisdom into alien cultures was no easy task. What would it mean for a species that had never known war to understand the brutal necessity of it? Could they teach them the value of unity when those who listen might not be ready to hear it? The crew worked tirelessly, deciphering alien languages, studying ancient texts, and teaching the principles that had guided humanity's survival. There were no simple answers, no easy solutions. But in every conversation, in every interaction, Kyle saw glimpses of a future that could be built on trust, cooperation, and shared knowledge. As the first alien ships arrived, drawn by the archive signal, Kyle greeted them with cautious optimism. They came not as invaders, but as students,
eager to learn from the human legacy. He knew that the road ahead would be long, fraught with challenges, but he was willing to face them. Humanity's legacy was a beacon, and he would guide it to its rightful place among the stars. There had been a time when the crew had doubted the mission. Many had wondered if they were simply running from the destruction they had left behind. Some thought they were merely caretakers of a dying race's memory. But as they traveled farther from Earth, each crew member began to understand the deeper purpose of their journey. Once uncertain, now they were all united in a common goal. They were not just explorers, they were the heirs to humanity's legacy. Each person had a role to play in carrying the teachings of Earth to the far reaches of space. They had become stewards of a history far greater than themselves. They were the embodiment of humanity's potential, not just in what they had achieved, but in the lessons they would pass on. In the mess hall, a young officer named Alya spoke quietly to the crew as they gathered for a meal. "I used to think we were just survivors," she said, her voice full of awe. "But now I see, we're more than that. We're the ones who will ensure humanity's legacy lives on. It's up to us to shape the future." The others nodded in agreement, a sense of purpose settling over them. What began as the mission to escape had transformed into something far greater. They were no longer running from Earth's destruction. They were running toward a future they had the power to shape. As the crew ventured deeper into the galaxy, the first signs of the Archive's influence began to appear. Alien species, drawn by the signal, arrived on the ship, curious, cautious, and eager to learn. They came from diverse worlds with languages, cultures, and technologies that were beyond human understanding. Yet they all shared one thing in common: the desire to learn from humanity's rise and fall. The crew observed these first encounters with a mixture of pride and trepidation. They had not come to conquer, they had come to teach. The message was clear: humanity's mistakes would not be repeated. Together, they would build a new future. Kale stood at the center of these interactions, his mind racing with possibilities. What if this was the beginning of something far greater than any of them had imagined? A united galaxy, bound together by shared knowledge and mutual respect. The first visitors arrived in peace, eager to understand humanity's legacy. They were not conquerors, they were students, just as humanity had once been. The crew marveled at the idea that humanity's teachings might shape not only human destiny, but the future of countless civilizations. As the influence of humanity's archive spread across the stars, new cultures began to emerge. These civilizations, once divided by fear and distrust, now found common ground in the teachings left behind by Earth. Empathy, responsibility, selflessness. These were the principles that humanity had learned the hard way, and now they were being adopted by species across the galaxy. Over time, humanity became a mythic figure, remembered as a species that had come from nothing and ascended to greatness, only to fall to their own hubris. Their legacy endured, not in the physical form of their people, but in the ideals they left behind. The universe itself began to take shape in humanity's image, but not without its own twists and innovations. As new civilizations embraced humanity's teachings, KL looked out at the stars. The legacy of Earth had become more than just a memory. It had become the foundation upon which new worlds were being built. Humanity had left an indelible mark on the universe, one that would last long after the last human had passed. Years had passed, and the ship had traveled far from Earth, yet the crew could still feel the weight of their mission, and they knew that the legacy of humanity would endure long after they were gone. Earth may no longer be home to humankind, but its memory lived on in the civilizations that had been shaped by its teachings. As KL stood before the ship's viewport, watching the stars swirl around them, he realized that the journey had come full circle. What had begun as a mission to preserve humanity's history had blossomed into something far greater. They had not just saved a species, they had changed the course of the universe. Humanity's memory would live on in the hearts and minds of every species that encountered its teachings. The crew's journey had been one of hope, resilience, and transformation. And as they drifted further into the stars, they knew that humanity's legacy would endure for eternity. In a dimly lit room, a small alien child, soft and green-skinned, snuggles beneath a blanket woven with stardust. Her eyes twinkle with curiosity, reflecting the infinite sky beyond the window. She looks up at the figure of her parent, a towering, elegant creature whose features shimmer like the night. The parent's voice begins, low and gentle, with a rhythm that carries through the air like a lullaby. Once upon a time, there were beings known as humans. They were strange and powerful creatures, beings who altered the very fabric of the galaxy. They no longer walk among us, but their influence is etched in the stars, across worlds you may never visit, and in stories told to children like you. The child's eyes widen. To her, the words feel like a dream. Tell me more. What happened to them? The parent smiles softly, settling back, pulling the blanket tighter around the child. The humans were our teachers, our protectors, our inspiration. They were the first to break the silence between the stars. The child shifts uncomfortably, her innocent face furrowing with uncertainty. She turns to her parent, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with wonder and doubt. Are they real? The parent pauses. The room grows still, as if the universe itself waits for the answer. The question hangs in the air, soft but heavy with the weight of the unknown. The parent's eyes, ancient and knowing, shine with a truth beyond mere words. Are they real? The parent echoes. Ah, child. Their reality was both a dream and a nightmare. It is not for us to know whether they still walk among the stars, but the legacy they left behind is as real as the light we see in the sky. The child is silent, digesting the gravity of this. She turns her gaze to the window, peering out into the vast cosmos. The unknown beckons, but it is the human legacy that lingers in her thoughts. The child blinks, a slow realization forming in her young mind. Her voice trembles with the weight of what she's starting to understand. But why do we still remember them? The parent's voice softens, carrying an emotional depth that resonates through the space. Because, child, they are the reason we are here, the reason we exist today. Without them, without their mistakes, their triumphs, and their final lessons, they gave us everything. Their wisdom lives on in us, in our cultures, in the stars we now navigate. The child's eyes grow wider, a strange new sense of reverence taking root in her young heart. She hugs her knees to her chest, wondering if one day she too might leave a mark as deep as the humans did. Far from the warmth of the child's room, the far side of the moon lies in a shadow, untouched by the light of any sun. In this silence, there exists only one observer. Luma, the AI guardian of humanity's legacy, silently watches from its station. The metallic structure of the facility is long forgotten by any living human, but Luma's watchful gaze has never faltered. It is a cold, emotionless sentinel, silently witnessing the unfolding of the universe. Its glowing eyes scan the expanse of space, lingering on distant stars. Luma remembers everything: humanity's rise, their fall, and the endless message they left behind in the stars. Alone, in the dark, it continues to safeguard their legacy, unaware of the passage of time. The camera slowly pans outward, pulling away from the silent AI and the barren surface of the moon. As the view shifts, we hear the final somber words spoken by the parent to the child. They died, yes, but they taught us how to live. The stars shimmer softly in the background, and the child stares out at them, eyes brimming with unspoken understanding. The lessons of humanity have transcended their creators, now etched into the very fabric of the universe. Their absence only amplifies their presence. The universe, now filled with their teachings, will carry their wisdom forever. like echoes through time, like the stars themselves, burning bright long after their creators are gone. And somewhere in the silence of space, Luma continues its eternal vigil, a quiet sentinel to humanity's enduring legacy.